let's go. So we got JD Vance and Pete Hegseth getting heckled at DC Guard visit at the Union Station.
So, look, guys, what we want to do here was
we saw a little bit of this earlier. This is the full video.
To the National Guard's folks, to the cops, for actually keeping this place safe. If you look at what's happened in Washington, D.C. in just the past 9 days, we've seen a 35% reduction in violent crime. We've seen over a 50% reduction in robberies. We are seeing really substantial effects because these guys are busting their ass. So I want to come here, highlight what they're doing, say thank you in person, obviously pass out a few burgers, but most of all, just send a message to the American people. Look, we don't have to live
as
like
you can
this.
hear, they're fucking, they're going at it.
To be taken over by violence and by disorder and by chaos. You can actually do stuff. You can actually bring law and order to communities. You've just got to have the political willpower to do it. And I think you hear these guys outside screaming at us. Of course, these are a bunch of crazy protesters. But I'll tell you, a couple of years ago,
okay, I think we saw. Yeah, so we saw like the first like 2 minutes,
vagrants, and it was scaring the hell out of my kids. And one of the things that we've done are these.
I think we got up to when he was talking.
Safe capital. And when I talk to all of them, Stephen, we've all had a chance to talk to them. They're proud of this mission. They're proud to be a part of making sure law and order is established here in the capital. We're resourcing with everything they need, working with our law enforcement partners. So the National Guard,
dude, they're having a field day, man. They are screaming.
That is beautiful. The residents can come.
I can't even tell what the fuck.
We're committed to this mission, just like the one at the southern border and in Los Angeles. Our law enforcement officers deserve to be able to do their job safely. And American citizens, putting American citizens and our country first, is something President Trump has emphasized from the beginning. So thank you to these troops. I know I always liked a good cheeseburger when I was in uniform, so hopefully we could deliver a few of those. It's an honor to be here with you, and also thanks for being here.
Thank you. And first of all, thank you to the Vice President for bringing us here today. Thank you so much.
What the fuck are
your leadership, and most importantly, thank you to the men and women of the National Guard.
Oh, free DC? Is that what they're saying?
There are residents who lived in Washington, D.C. their entire lives. Their parents lived here. Their grandparents lived here. And they have lived for generations in intolerable conditions of crime and decay. There are parts of the city, I moved to the city 20 years ago. There are places where I've seen graffiti that has been untouched for 2 decades. There are homeless encampments that have made it impossible for families to use public parks and public recreation for as long as I've lived here. There are hundreds of residents of this city who are shot in street violence every single year, making it one of the most violent cities on planet Earth. And for too long, 99% of this city has been terrorized by 1% of this city. And the voices that you hear out there, those crazy communists, they have no roots, they have no connections to the city, they have no families they're raising in this city, they have no one that they're sending to school in this city, they have no jobs in this city, they have no connections to this community at all. But they're the ones who've been advocating for the 1%, the criminals, the killers, the rapists, the drug dealers. And I'm glad they're here today. Because me, Pete, and the Vice President are all going to leave here, and inspired by them, we're going to add thousands more resources to this city to get the criminals and the gang members out of here. We're going to dismantle those networks, and we're going to prove that a city can serve for the law-abiding citizens who live there. We are not going to let the communists destroy a great American city, let alone the nation's capital. And let's just also address another thing. All these demonstrators that you've seen out here in recent days, all of these elderly white hippies, they're not part of the city and never have been. And by the way, most of the citizens who live in Washington, D.C. are black. This is not a city that has had any safety for its black citizens for generations. And President Trump is the one who is fixing that with the support of the Metropolitan Police Department, the support of the National Guard, and our federal law enforcement officers. So we're going to ignore these stupid white hippies that all need to go home and take a nap because they're all over 90 years old. And we're going to get back to the business of protecting the American people and the citizens of Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Stephen. A few questions.
Mr. Vice President, why are troops stationed here at Union Station on the National Mall instead of areas in D.C. where crime is statistically highest?
Well, if you've ever been to Union Station in the last few years with your family, you know the crime is actually extremely high right here in Union Station. You have vagrants, you have drug addicts, you have the chronically homeless, you have the mentally ill who harass, who threaten violence, who attack.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. Well, when you think of crime, yeah, it's
we can
a
come
lot
and share a
of.
meal or go shopping
It's
with
just
your
you
family.
guys
It
aren't,
should not be a place
right? You guys
where
aren't
parents of
putting
small
those
children are
people
afraid to
in
bring
jail
them because, to
because
Stephen's
mentally
point, we've empowered
ill,
criminals over the people who actually need public
Why do you
safety
think
in
a
the
lot
city.
of those
So I
guys
think Union
get kicked
Station is a
out
great
today?
example of what's possible when you actually have the political willpower to bring law and order and common decency back to the public spaces of the United States of America. So many Americans live in cities. They occupy these spaces. They know how unsafe they are, and they would love to be able to just live their life in places like Union Station without violent criminals making it impossible. We have changed so much in 9 days, and I thought it important to highlight how great of a space this could be, how easy it could be to actually enjoy something like Union Station if you just had politicians who stopped prioritizing violent criminals over the public citizens who deserve public safety in their own communities.
And to add to that real quick, we talked to a first responder before we came up here, said this is their number one call location is Union Station for first responders. So it's not as if this is insignificant. In many ways, this is part of the epicenter. And we go to that and return it to the safe location that it should be. It also frees up resources around the city. And you've seen a majority of the arrests happening in a lot of those places that need help.
Were crime
Will you extend
statistics
past 30 days?
Were crime
Will you extend past 30 days, and do you think you have congressional, will Congress go along with that?
Well, look, we'll ultimately let the President of the United States determine where we are after 30 days of this emergency order. I think that we're going to make a lot of progress over the next 20 days. I think that we're 9 days into this thing. But if the President of the United States thinks that he has to extend this order to ensure that people have access to public safety, then that's exactly what he'll do. If he thinks he doesn't have to do that, obviously he'll make that determination. But what we're going to do is try to empower these guys to do as good of a job as possible to bring public safety and order back to Washington, D.C. This is the national, cultural, and political capital of the world's greatest nation. And you talk to people, black, brown, white, so many of them are afraid to bring their kids into its public spaces. It's a shame. It's a blight. It actually should make every American ashamed that the world's leading superpower, our national capital, was unsafe for families to walk around at night. That is a disgrace. We don't think that it's acceptable, and thank God we have presidential leadership to change it, and that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Were crime statistics manipulated by the D.C. police?
Well, I think that crime statistics all over our country were massively underreported because a lot of people would pick up the phone, they'd call somebody, they'd try to get help, and nobody would show up. If you look at wait times and 911 response times all across our country, but certainly in Washington, D.C.,
Oh, yeah.
they were way too long.
Yeah,
And
they're
that wasn't
way
because
too-
of the
yeah,
DC
some of it
police.
is way
That
too
was
long
because
in
there was
certain
too much
areas.
crime and too few law enforcement agents on the street to bring order and decency to this city. You talk to these guys. I talked to three
That's
police
because
officers earlier.
they're
I talked to the
either
National Guard. They are
taking
so
care of
happy
some other
that
shit
they've
that's
been empowered
happening,
to do their job, which
or
is to
they're
make
just so
American
spread out
streets
thin that
safe
they
for American
can't- they don't
citizens.
have
And I think that
someone who
empowerment
can
is
get
going to
there
keep on
fast.
going until we make America, and D.C. in particular, a safe place again.
What evidence do you have or that the DOJ has? Are you going to be releasing it?
I'm sorry?
Are you going to be releasing evidence of this?
Of what? That D.C. has a terrible crime problem? You just got to look around. Obviously, D.C. has a terrible crime problem. The Department of Justice statistics back it up. The FBI statistics back it up. Just talk to a resident of this city, this beautiful, great American city. Don't they deserve? We talk about human
it's
rights.
like-
You hear these people outside screaming, "Free D.C." Let's free D.C. from lawlessness. Let's free Washington D.C.
Yeah.
from one of the highest murder rates in the entire world. Let's free Washington D.C. so that young families can walk around and feel safe and secure. That's what we're trying to free D.C. from. And as Stephen said, it's kind of bizarre that we have a bunch of old, primarily white people who are out there protesting the policies that keep people safe when they've never felt danger.
Dude,
in their
JD
entire
Vance
lives.
is even calling it
Cities are
out
next. Are
too.
you gonna
Oh
target any
shit.
others?
Vice President,
Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Vice President.
We're old
What are
and
your thoughts on the
primarily
establishment
who are
media's
primarily
criticisms
old and
of
white.
President Trump's push to end the Russia-Ukraine war?
Well, I'll let these guys jump in. I mean, look, on the Russia-Ukraine war, we'll obviously have time to talk about that. I think the president campaigned on being a president of peace. He's already ended 6 wars. He's trying to end another. I think it's kind of disgraceful that the American media is attacking the president for trying to bring peace to the world. But most importantly, the president is trying to bring peace to the streets of our own cities. I really can't overemphasize this enough. It's the greatest country in the world. We've got moms and dads and young families. Shouldn't they be able to enjoy public spaces without vagrants taking away
I just hear
basic
that
public safety
chick-
from the American
I just
citizenry?
hear that
The fact
chick
that it's taken
yelling
so
in the
long
back.
to
I feel
bring
like she's gonna
common
have
decency and law and order back to Washington, D.C. is an
Just
indictment
stressing
of a
the
generation
fuck
of failed
out.
leadership. And I hope these guys know how grateful we are that they're doing the job that so many failed to do. They're actually keeping the city safe. We're proud of you, and we're grateful to you.
Polls show that a majority of DC residents don't support the Guard. What's your message to that?
I'm sorry?
Polls show that a majority of DC residents don't support the Guard here. So what's your message to the majority of DC residents?
I'm highly skeptical that a majority of D.C. residents don't want the city to have better public safety and more reasonable safety standards within Washington, D.C. I don't know what poll
Honestly,
you're
I
talking
would
about. Maybe the
welcome
same polls
them
that
to
said
come
Kamala
to
Harris
fucking
will popular
California, because
likes
holy
influence.
shit, man. Come
Okay,
on.
we're going to stop there. We're going to grab a quick bite with some of the soldiers here and the National Guardsmen who are keeping the city safe.
At least,
Again, I just
Southern
want to say
California.
we're grateful to these guys. You guys are making D.C. safe again. We're proud of you. And we're grateful for you.
I mean, you can say San Francisco and San Diego. I think even Bakersfield has some issues. Los Angeles definitely has issues, especially with the Skid Row and like homeless encampments and shit. And there you have it. And then we got and then we have we also have him. This was yesterday or 2 days ago. I didn't know he did this interview, so let's watch it too.
Mr. Vice President, thank you for having us here
I should
today.
watch this one first.
So you had quite an eventful morning over at Union
Everything will
Station,
be
as
in
we
the
saw in that
description.
clip.
All linked.
Tell us about how you decided to go over there. You know, a lot of us D.C. residents
All
and former
open
D.C.
source
residents
here.
know it well, but it's been the site of a lot of crime in recent years.
Of course.
And you decided to pay a visit. What happened?
Well, so a couple things. So first of all, I had heard from a couple of friends who used to avoid Union Station because there were vagrants and there were crazy people screaming at kids that they avoided Union Station. But over the past 9 days since the president did this emergency order,
so
it
this
looks
is
a lot
him
better. It
talking
feels a lot
about it.
safer. So I was talking with Stephen Miller and with Pete Hegseth about this in the Oval Office yesterday, and I was like, you know, we should just go over there and say hello to people. And you've got a lot of National Guardsmen over there, some D.C. cops who have been heckled by some of the protesters. So I thought, what a good show of moral support to have the Vice President, some of the senior team at the White House show up. We bought him some burgers, hang out with him a little bit. And actually, the most interesting thing, Laura, was after the cameras left, Pete and Steve and I stayed and, you know, had lunch with these troops and just learned a lot about what they're seeing, about how much the city has changed in just the past 9 days. So crazy statistic. You know, violent crime has dropped in D.C. 35% in 9 days. Robberies in D.C. have dropped 55% in 9 days. And it highlights the fact that this living with lawlessness and disorder, that's fundamentally a question of political will. If you've got the political will to enforce the law, you can make even cities like D.C. safe again. And that's what we're demonstrating. And I hope that the American people take an important lesson from this, because obviously D.C. is a federal city, New York, L.A., these places are not. I hope the American people just recognize that you don't have to live with lawlessness. You don't have to live with third world murder rates. If you just take control of these cities, you can make them safe places to live in.
So your pal Gavin Newsom calls this an abuse of power, that this is just a power grab, and this is all stunt for show, and that you all are going to roll through other cities. You've heard things about, it's martial law is going to be declared. And to that you say?
Well, first of all, how is it a power grab, or how is it a stunt when we've already declined murders by 35%
Also,
in 9 days?
declare
How many
martial
people are living
law
and
is
breathing today
completely
because Donald Trump had the
different
willpower
than
to say, you know what?
federalization. I
We're
mean, I
sick of
guess you
DC
could say
being a home to
federalization
lawlessness.
is
We're going to bring some public
martial
order back to the nation's
lawing,
capital.
I
So what I
guess.
would say to Gavin Newsom or to anybody else in some of these big blue states or big blue cities is,
when
you
martial
can
law
have
happens,
law and
wouldn't
order,
that
you can
mean
have
like the
comedy scenes, you can
whole
have public
United
spaces
States
that
would
young
be on
families can go to
lockdown?
again? I'll tell you a story, Laura. A couple of years ago, the last time I was in Union Station, I took my little
same
kids
with
there to
China.
get lunch,
They
and
have
they were being
basic
screamed at by
martial
homeless
law,
people,
right?
not compassionate to the homeless people to let them just
Same with South
fester
Korea.
when they
Don't
clearly
they
have
have,
mental
like,
health
martial
problems,
law?
not compassionate to young families to not be able to go into one of America's great public spaces
you
without being
basically do
screamed at by a
military
person
training.
clearly suffering
Why are
from a
Democrats
mental
doing
illness.
this?
I don't know.
Why is this
I
a
don't know.
political strategy?
Laura, I have thought about this so often and so many times. I don't know why Democrats seem to love public disorder and chaos almost as a political ideology. And I think that part of what's going on is Democrats have gotten so
Obviously,
divorced
they
from the
don't
communities
get to
that they
help people.
allegedly serve that they don't realize the gross majority of residents in D.C., they want to walk through Union Station and just have a bite to eat or enjoy the space with their families. They don't realize that so many people have been absolutely terrorized by Democrat crime policies. And so maybe they just don't make the connection between what Gavin Newsom says and the fact that places like D.C. or Los Angeles have some of the highest murder rates in the world.
And the D.C. police are being investigated for potentially manipulating their crime data. I've heard this from other police forces across the country. Great cops, beat cops in places like Chicago have said, some of the crimes are reclassified to make a burglary something that's more of a disturbance, and that kind of stuff happens. But is this a federal issue at this point, if this is a manipulation of data and if it's widespread?
Well, it's certainly something that's being investigated, and I hope that we'll uncover what's going on. But even aside from the
that is a
manipulation
little
of data, when you have
suspicious how
911
they're
wait times that are so long, a lot of crime doesn't even get reported. And we hear this all the time.
Basically,
people say,
they can
well, my
hide,
home's being robbed.
right,
I'm not even going to
data
call the police because it's going to be
that
45
we
minutes
may be
before they show
looking
up.
for,
And that's not an indictment of the beat cop,
stuff
by the
they don't
way.
want
They're
us to
so
know.
overwhelmed by how much violent crime there is that they're unable to actually bring public safety to these communities. So what we're doing is just changing the balance a little bit. We're putting more good guys on the streets, and we're taking more bad guys off the streets. And we think that's the sort of thing that's going to bring public safety back to D.C. Again, it's already working in a very big way.
Now, on to Ukraine. Your February meeting with Zelensky and the president, that was quite something to behold.
It was good
how did you all break the ice this time? Take us into the room, because we're all dying to know that.
Well, I think so President Zelensky walked into the Oval Office. I was chatting with him, with the president, with some of the senior Ukrainian delegation. I said, Mr. President, so long as you behave, I won't say anything. And he just chuckled a little bit. It was a good little icebreaker. I mean, what the president's trying to do, meaning our president is trying to do, is bring a 3.5-year, very brutal conflict to a stop. It's killed way too many Ukrainians, way too many Russians. It's completely transformed the economy of Europe and of big parts of Asia. We just got to get back to peace. And I really do think, you heard Vladimir Putin say this, that if Donald Trump had been president in 2022, this war would have never started. And now the president is really spending a lot of time, a lot of effort to stop Joe Biden's war, because I think it is Joe Biden's war. Without him being weak and provocative, I don't think that Russia would have invaded Ukraine. And now we have a situation where the president is trying to be strong and bold to try to bring this thing to a close.
Russia can have a mini
I'm going to call Putin now. The Western leaders, they've all come to Washington. Now, what was their facial expression at that point? Did they anticipate that this was going to happen, because it was 8 hours ahead Moscow time?
Yeah, it was like 1 in the morning Moscow time, and they had no anticipation. So we're actually in the east wing of the White House, and the president says, we've had a pretty good meeting. I'm going to go call Vladimir Putin and see what he says about it. And everybody's like, oh, you're going to call him next week? And he's like, no, what time is it in Moscow? Let's call him right now. And I think one of the things I've realized about President Trump's leadership is he cuts through the BS of some of these diplomatic protocols and just says, I'm going to get things done. If I want to talk to somebody, I'm going to talk to somebody. You had a lot of the Europeans who were saying, no, there needs to be proper, vetting, and the teams have to prepare the phone call and blah, 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 blah. And the president was like, no, I want to talk to the guy. I'm going to talk to the guy. And I think that kind of no holds barred.
Honestly, I feel
BS
like these guys are trying
part
to
of the
do
reason
some
why we made the progress we have. And we've made a lot of progress, Laura. Look, who knows what's going to happen? The president tells me this all the time. You can never say with certainty what the outcome in this situation is going to be. But we now have the Russians talking to the Ukrainians. They're talking details about what would be necessary on each side to stop the fighting and stop the killing. We've made more progress in 3 months than the country had made in 3 years in stopping this conflict. And I think it's because sometimes you just need a president who will pick up the phone and call somebody.
When Vladimir Putin meets with Volodymyr Zelensky, can we assume that all the big details will have been discussed and generally agreed upon, namely the security agreement and land swap?
It's a good question. I think that if you go through the bureaucratic process, then the answer is yes. But I think the president's preference and my preference would be, let's have them meet regardless. You don't have to figure out every issue. And sometimes leaders sitting down face to face can break the logjam that their teams don't necessarily have the ability to do. There really are 2 big questions lingering out there. And in some ways it's very simple, but in some ways it's very complicated. Number one is Ukraine wants to know that it's not going to get invaded again by Russia. It wants to know that it's got territorial integrity long into the future. The Russians want certain pieces of territory, most of which they've occupied, but some of which they haven't. So that is really where the meat of the negotiation is. The Ukrainians want security guarantees. The Russians want a certain amount of territory. Again, we finally got the details. We're working on them, but we haven't figured everything out. And I don't think that we should force, we shouldn't say that they can't sit down until you figured out every little detail. Sometimes them sitting down is what facilitates figuring out those details.
You have been so strong on the idea of Europe paying for Europe's defense.
Sure.
And I think a lot of Americans don't understand that the EU GDP last year was about $19.18 trillion, if I'm right, give or take. And the UK's was about $2.9 trillion. Sure. Ours is $29.8 trillion, right?
You know the numbers better than I do. You should be Treasury Secretary.
Sorry, Scott, I got your job. No, but so this is a lot of money. Europe has the money to defend itself. So the security agreement, my question to you is, why should America carry the lion's share of the burden from now until Lord knows when for Europe when Europe has the money to defend itself?
Well, I don't think we should carry the burden here. I think that we should be helpful.
Yeah, that's the other thing, too. Why? Yeah, that's a good question. Why the fuck is Europe trying to make us pay for so much shit? It doesn't make any fucking sense. We're both in this together, you motherfuckers. Literally. Why the fuck are you trying to make us pay for more shit, you motherfucks?
The war and to stop the killing. But I think that we should expect, and the president
is it because we have the better shit and you're fucking pussies?
And what he said very clearly is, look, the United States is open to having the conversation, but we're not going to make commitments until we figure out what's going to be necessary.
Right, I think these countries are obviously trying to find ways to get.
He never takes anything off the table. He never puts anything fully on the table because he doesn't want to give away his leverage.
Right,
this is the private conversation that we're all going to have about what's necessary. necessary to stop
right?
the war.
Once
But no
once
matter
shit
what
hits the fan,
happens, no matter
all
what
they're gonna
form
do
this
is,
takes,
oh,
the
yeah, I
Europeans are
didn't do
going
it.
to have
I
to
didn't
take
do it.
the
It was
lion's share of
them.
the
It was
burden. It's their continent, it's their security, and the president's been very clear they're going to have to step up here.
What's it like meeting Putin? Just what was he like, just one-on-one?
So I've actually never met Putin. The president did that meeting. I've talked to him on the phone a number of times. You know, it's interesting. He's more soft-spoken than you would necessarily expect. You know, that the American media has a particular image of him. He's soft-spoken in a certain way. He's very deliberate. He's very careful. And I think fundamentally he's a person who looks out for the interests as he sees it of Russia. And I think one of the reasons he respects the President of the United States is because he knows the President looks out for the interests of the American people. And while they often disagree about issues, and obviously the president has been very critical of Vladimir Putin, the president's also willing to work with anybody if he thinks it's going to accomplish an important goal for America. And we all agree an important goal is to stop the killing.
Let's move to the economy, because that is still the number one issue in the United States for most voters.
Sure.
The Democrats seem to be banking on an economic
I went to the
downturn,
market recently.
just like they seem to be banking on chaos in the streets against the National Guard.
Sure.
How
It's
do
a
you
little
see
bad.
the economy in the next 6 months as
let's
we're
just
seeing
say
some
some prices have increased.
continuing uncertainty regarding interest rates and Jerome Powell?
Well, unfortunately, you have the Democrats. I think they really are betting against the United States. We're betting on the United States and the American people. There are a lot of good things happening in the economy. You have a lot of new investment coming in part because of the tariffs. People are trying to avoid the tariffs by building in the United States, which is their whole point, Laura, and why the president has been right about this issue from the beginning.
Yeah, that's why
you
he
see blue-collar
keeps
wages
fucking doing
rising
the
at the
tariff
fastest
wars
rate in
right
50,
now.
60
He's
years.
hoping, like,
You see
the
inflation
tariff
cooling
wars
off,
will
that there's still a lot of
force
work to do
people
there.
to,
So I feel very good
right,
about where
start
the
making
economy
production
is. You can never
facilities
predict the
and
future.
start bringing back
But I
some
think
of
what
those,
people
right,
all over
some
the
of that
world
stuff
recognize
back
is that
home.
it's a time to build in the United States of America. If you want to build a car, you want to build a car manufacturing facility.
Yeah, I mean,
if you want to build a next generation
basically the
technology
only
facility, if you want to build
American-made car
houses,
now is like
whatever
a
you want to
fucking
do,
Tesla,
we are the
man.
place to do
How about
business.
rare earths and magnets, which
Well,
is
that's
what we're
something-
dependent on with China, which gives them
what?
an enormous amount of leverage over us?
And that's something the president has really directed the entire team to fix that issue because
I guess
whether
you
it's
could
rare
say,
earth
like,
magnets
some
or
of the-
pharmaceuticals, he wants the United States to depend on Americans.
like,
We should not be
supercars.
in a situation where
I mean, even
foreign
then,
adversaries or
some of those
competitors
supercars are-
have control over critical parts of our economy. Think about this, Laura. God forbid Americans are in some sort of conflict and we can't get antibiotics because we're in a conflict against a country that makes the antibiotics. You don't have economic freedom and you don't have real prosperity unless you make your own stuff. That's why the president of the United States is making it so much easier to build things and make things in America.
Now, I know you love talking about politics because you're going
I
to say,
don't.
well, we can't look forward to 2028. I understand that.
I'm sick of politics,
But
Laura.
Democrats are still doing their 2024 autopsy.
Yes.
Okay. And part of their autopsy is that going forward, they need to kind of be more like Trump in
Only
tone,
Tesla.
tougher, have nicknames.
Everywhere
Newsom's
else
given
we
you a
should-
nickname, which I don't even understand, called Just Dance Vance. So I guess, what's your favorite dance? What's your favorite dance music? I mean, it's the dumbest nickname. But how lost are the Democrats right now? And you can answer the dance question.
I mean, look, the autopsy for the Democrats, some free
buy
political
all the
advice from the
parts and
president of the United
then
States is
assemble
it
sounding
here. Too much.
stop sounding like crazy people. That really is all it is. I mean, this idea that Gavin Newsom is somehow going to mimic Donald Trump's style, I think that ignores the fundamental
fact that
genius of
that's
President
happening
Trump's
is-
political success, which is that he's authentic. He
I
just
mean,
is
right,
who
we
he
already
is.
get
You've
all
gotta
of
be
our
yourself. You've actually
semiconductors
talk
and
to people
chips from
honestly about the
overseas
issues.
anyways,
I don't think
too,
it's
so,
that
like, that's
complicated.
pretty fun.
Don't be a crazy person. Be authentic. If the Democrats did that, they'd do a hell of a lot better. But the thing is, the Democrats
tariff
really
war
can't
is
help
hurting us all.
themselves. If you look at the transgender issue, they're still talking about letting men play in women's sports. If you look at the crime issue, they're calling Donald Trump a fascist for taking action that in 9 days has dropped armed robberies by 55%. So part of sounding less crazy is being less crazy. And if the Democrats were less crazy, I think we'd all get along a whole lot better.
I'm not trying to pick on California because I am a member of the California bar, so don't get me here. But look, we've had a situation where they're
No, you
giving
should pick on
commercial driver's
California.
licenses
California's a piece of
to
shit
illegal
state, man.
aliens who can't speak
they
English.
Who don't
fix
have
their
basic
fucking-
English competency.
And they're killing Americans,
Which
as we
matters a
saw
whole
in
lot
Florida.
because if you're going to read a road sign, Laura, you might as well, or you need to actually read the language the road sign is written in. And of course, this
talking
illegal
about
alien in
the
California
fucking
killed
driver.
3 innocent people
Houston
because he was reckless,
gave-
he was dangerous, he
I
shouldn't have
don't
been in the
even-
country. But now we come to find out he can't even read in the language the
Yeah,
road
I
signs
mean,
are
it
written
was
in.
just
So
the
this
program
is,
that
again, it goes to the
facilitated that
Democrats'
shit.
basic problem,
Yeah,
which
it's
is they're just too
unfortunate. I
crazy.
mean,
Imagine
at the
if
end
you
of
had a
the day,
Democratic Party
right, that
that was
dude's getting
focused
fucked.
on enhancing the
He's going
prosperity and the safety of American citizens, rather than bringing in millions of low-wage illegal immigrants, giving them the right to vote, and allowing them to effectively make it harder for Americans to live a good life. That's all this is about. They care more about low-wage foreigners than they do about their own people. That is the fundamental craziness at the heart of the Democratic Party. And until they change that, Gavin Newsom can mimic Donald Trump all that he wants to. They're still going to lose unless they get better policies that actually serve the American people.
Given the fact that they're endangering the lives and killing American citizens, as we saw with that horrific crash in Florida.
Literally killing American
literally
citizens.
killing Americans.
I
I mean, these are not made-up statistics. This just happened. I mean, federal highway funds. That's leverage that the federal government has over the states
like, what,
that refuse
69
to do the
guns or
basics.
59
Would you
guns
consider advising that DOT
that?
and the administration pull back on federal highway funds for these states?
So I don't want to get ahead of any administration announcements, but we are looking at a whole host of points of leverage we can exercise over California and other states to make sure they comply with the law. Sanctuary cities are killing people because you allow these violent criminals to set up shop in your cities. Obviously, you saw this case with a person who murdered people on the road, 3 people on the road, because he couldn't even read the road signs. We have a lot of points of leverage here, but fundamentally, I think the American people have to stand with us here. Because when we go and tell the governor of California or the governor of New York that you have to stop putting the interests of illegal aliens over American citizens, we need the American people to stand with us. And I think that they will. I think that they are. But we're definitely not going to let this slide, Laura. You can't do it. You've got to stop putting the interests of foreigners who don't have the right to be here over the interests of American citizens. That is the entire point and purpose of the Democratic Party. If you go back to the election of 2024, what was the big issue? The big issue was illegal immigration. They were actually defending the rights of illegal immigrants to come into our country, to vote in our elections, to collect Social Security and Medicaid that ought by right go to American citizens, to say nothing of housing. This is actually the biggest driver of housing costs in some of these big blue cities, is that they've flooded the zone with illegal immigrants. As we've kicked illegal aliens out of our country, you actually see housing costs start to level off. So fundamentally, the difference between Republicans and Democrats is we care about American citizens. They actually don't like American citizens and want to replace them with low-wage foreigners. It's a very stark difference, and I think the American people are going to continue to reward us because of it.
Rich people
when Elon Musk
buy like
departed,
6 or 7 houses.
He said it was dramatic departure.
Rent them out.
And I know you know him well. You're good friends with him. But he said he's going to start a third party, and that sent everyone into the stratosphere. But he's kind of backed off that. And now, according to the Wall Street Journal, he is considering backing you in 2028. I know you don't want to get ahead of the president. He's only 7 months into this. But would that be something you would welcome? Certainly his staying in politics and perhaps supporting you down the road.
Yeah, so I saw the story, and as far as I can tell, the story is completely fake. I've never talked with Elon Musk or, frankly, any other donor about 2028. I do think that it would be a huge mistake for Elon to go forward with a third party. And my argument to him is, whether you like it or not, you are now perceived by the far left as on the side of the American right. You believe in law and order. You believe in closed borders. You believe in economic growth and prosperity. You believe in making things in the United States of America. The idea that Elon is ever going to go back to being sort of in the middle, where Democrats and Republicans both like him, that's just not going to happen. He is perceived as being on the American right. And so if he doesn't like things the Republican Party is doing, my advice to Elon would be, try to fix the Republican Party. Try to push it in your own way. Disagree with me all you want. Disagree with the President of the United States, but don't pretend that you can make a big difference with a third party. I think Elon would make a much bigger difference if he stayed loyal to President Trump's Republican Party. And if he had disagreements, express those disagreements from the inside as opposed to from the outside.
The New York Times just reported that the Democrats are in a voter registration spiral. 2.1 million Americans ditched the Democrat Party between 2020 and 2024. Meanwhile, the GOP is doing pretty well. They're gaining 2.4 million. So is this a moment where we could see the midterm curse reversed and the Republican Party gain some ground?
I think we have a good chance, but take nothing for granted, Laura. You have the Democrats are still trying to register illegal aliens. They still explicitly say that they want illegal aliens to vote in federal elections. We still have, I think, a lot of headwinds from the media. They never tell the truth about what we're doing, about what the president has accomplished for the American people. So don't rest on our laurels. Keep on achieving victories for the American people, and keep on trying
at
to
the
win.
end of the
That's our path
day,
to
right?
being able
If
to
these
continue
people
to govern
aren't
this
going to
country.
truthfully tell
I'm not, look,
things,
I'm not going to bank anything in 2026. We just have to keep working at it.
Who's your best friend in the cabinet?
We have a lot of good friends, right? The weird thing is, you say it's one person, then fundamentally that's an insult to other people. I mean, Marco and I are very close. We were close in the Senate. He's been a great friend of mine. I think he's doing a great job. Pete Hegseth, who I went to the Union Station, I think he's doing a great job as Secretary of Defense. And really, the D.C. swamp tried to destroy Pete Hegseth unlike anybody in the administration. And that really kind of, whenever I see the worst people in the world trying to tear a guy down, that makes me think he's on our side.
Are you doing
Exactly
push-ups
what
and
we did.
pull-ups with him and Bonnie? Are you
I have not yet done. I'm sure they can do more push-ups and pull-ups than I have. But I am, it's funny. I do love this presidential focus on fitness.
Well,
and Bobby and Peter obviously lead the way, but I'm going to participate as much as I can.
You're going to Georgia, big beautiful bill. Can we expect any fireworks down there?
And they're even saying like, oh, Trump
but,
stole
we're
the
gonna have a lot of fun,
presidency.
talk about the big successes of the big beautiful bill, the fact that it lowers taxes for the gross majority of Americans, the fact that we're making it easier to build things in America
calling
again.
Biden out for
So we're gonna have a good time, and we're gonna talk about all the things the president's doing just to make people's lives better. That's the whole reason we're doing this. We want Americans to be able to live safe, prosperous lives in their own country. We made a lot of progress in 7 months. We're going to make a lot more.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News
Anyways,
YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
If you want to take a look at it, it's Fox News. There you have it. The news. There you have it, there you have it, there you have it. Thanks for watching. It will be in the description. Right, all sources. Everything's open source. Right, no, I don't hide anything. I'm not like those fucking retarded goddamn fucking assholes, right? Don't do that plagiarism bullshit too. Fuck that. Anyways, there you have it.